So what was it like after your career started to take off on True Blood? All of a sudden, you have agents who are actually making money, like et cetera, et cetera. So it must have been like a period that was like filled with change on multiple fronts.
I mean, yes and no. I think, a lot of that happens, and then you have to decide as an individual how much of it you embrace. So I think absolutely I got better opportunity. I had fantastic representation that was not, available to me previous to that, which meant I was able to audition for more and more interesting projects. Um, the In terms of sort of public eye and view and things like that, I very quickly decided to just step away from that. This is not that strange for actors, but I think people are surprised to hear it. I generally don't like being the center of attention, unless I am acting, unless I'm in that space, and that's sort of the point of the
I
moment.
will confess to you, Deborah, I'm the same
Yeah,
way.
yeah. I think that surprises some people, but I think it's more common than we give it credit for. Yeah.
Knowing even what I know about you, that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. Just a little bit. When you've been dorky your whole life, you just sort of go, don't look at me.
All right, welcome back to Yang Speaks, everybody. We got a great episode today. Deborah Ann Woll joins the podcast. For those of you who are True Blood fans of the HBO show, you may know her. I know her from the Netflix series Daredevil, and I'm a fan. You're going to love this conversation. Also, quick reminder, on Thursdays now, we are back. Thursday episodes are back. We just did the future of energy. You guys loved it. And upcoming, we've got one. I'll leave it a surprise of what it is, but the infamous Carly Riley will be back joining, which many of you have been asking for her to come back. So we've got a great episode of The Future Of coming on. We've got new guests coming in. We're talking about cloning soon. We are talking about the Mars rover. We are talking about gaming. We're talking about all these different things coming up down the pike. So you don't want to miss our Thursday episodes as well. But for now, tune in, folks. Deborah Ann Woll joins after a quick word from our Yang Speaks sponsors. Thanks, y'all. New sponsor alert. This episode of Yang Speaks is brought to you by Calm. So if you're quarantining in COVID right now, your routine has been completely disrupted. And for me, when I'm off my routine, I don't wind down the right way. And so when I'm on my phone, I'm scrolling. That stuff like gives you endorphins and it's tougher to fall asleep. And what I love about Calm is that it helps you calm down and relax. So we're excited to partner with Calm, which is an app designed to help you ease stress and get the best sleep of your life. And when you relieve anxiety and improve your sleep, you feel better in every part of your life. And what's great about it, you can be scrolling through your phone. You're like, oh, wait, I need to go to sleep. I need to calm down and pop open the Calm app. It's got a whole library of programs designed for healthy sleep, like soundscapes and meditations and 100 sleep stories narrated by beautiful, soothing voices like Kelly Rowland, just whispering sweet nothings in your ear as you fall asleep. So for listeners to the show, we're offering a special limited time promotion of 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/yang. 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library with new content added every week. So get started today, calm.com/yang. That's calm.com/yang. This episode of Yang Speaks is brought to you by your favorite Hello Tushy, the coolest bidet company on the planet. This is frankly the future of toileting. They figured it out in Europe. It's time for us to figure it out here. It's a joke because they've been using bidets for centuries, but they've always been expensive, costing thousands of dollars. And now the brand new Hello Tushy 3.0 is here to level that playing field. It's stylish, eco-friendly, easy to install, and affordable, which is pretty cool. It attaches right to your existing toilet, no electricity or additional plumbing, and it cuts toilet paper use by 80%, which is great. We love saving money. We love helping the environment. Less paper, less money. All things are great. You've got a 60-day try it risk-free guarantee and a 12-month warranty. And these new ones essentially clean themselves. So it's pretty freaking cool. So here's how you do it. Go to hellotushy.com/Yang. Get 10% off because you're listening to this podcast. Plus you get free shipping. It's a special offer just for Yang Speaks listeners. So go to hellotushy.com/Yang for 10% off. hellotushy.com/Yang.
It is my pleasure and privilege to welcome to Yang Speaks incredible actress, role model to millions, someone that I've admired personally for years, in part because I think she's somewhat avowedly geeky. Deborah Ann Woll. Deborah, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I had no idea. And yes, I am avowedly geeky is for sure the right way to say it.
So, I feel like a lot of people first discovered you as an actress in True Blood, and then other people might have become a fan during Daredevil on Netflix, which, holy cow, if there was any show that should have been on for like forever.
Oh, thanks, yeah.
In my mind, it was that show. But you've been working for years beforehand. And one of the things I love to ask people, particularly people who are creatives like you, is how the heck do you get your start? Because it seems like the hardest thing in the world.
It is really hard, and I talk to students from my college and high school and things sometimes, and they ask the same question, and I don't always know that I have the answer. I do think that if you want to be in a creative or artistic career, it's absolutely possible. It will happen for you. It's just about sticking with it. And I know a lot of people who chose not to, and that is a perfectly valid decision. I've come up against that line a number of times myself, where I'm like, look, I'm good at math. I'm just going to go teach math or something like that, something that has some stability.
So avowedly geeky. Imagine if Deborah Ann Woll showed up in your class as your math teacher, and you'd be like, is this a TV show? What's going on?
I'm teaching algebra now. I'm done with the industry. So yeah, so it's hard. You just stick with it.
So you grew up in Brooklyn. Your parents, I don't think, were creatives in the same way.
Not in the same way. My father's an architect, which has creative elements to it. And my mother's a teacher, which I imagine does as well. But my father worked in the sort of community, or I guess he's retired mostly now, but in the community housing. So building and designing homes for people getting off the streets, off drugs, that kind of thing. And my mother taught middle school English and history.
So did you then get bitten by the theater bug in high school? Was it around that time frame?
Earlier. I actually can't remember a time when I didn't want to do this. So
wow.
I don't know how I knew, but there are videos of me at like 3 years old tap dancing around in my living room for my parents, and I just knew somehow.
So you were a natural or naturally drawn to it, and then your parents apparently recognized it very early on. So I live in New York, and so when you go to plays and shows, there are occasionally like child actors that come out. So the first thing that came to my mind was Deborah one of these people that I see running around?
I was not, unfortunately. In fact, one of our favorite plays when I was growing up that we went to see was Full Moon, which is Bill Irwin, and I'm forgetting the name of his partner. But they do basically clowning, and it's really incredible. If you ever get to see Bill Irwin's work, go check him out. But they did this thing where they would walk through the audience at intermission and pull two kids to do a comedy sketch with them in the second half. And they actually pulled my brother. So he was on Broadway before I ever was. And I was very upset about that at the time.
Were you also in attendance at this show?
I
was.
was.
No luck did he grab you?
I was not young and cute enough, I don't think. My brother is a very cherubic little boy. So I think he grabbed him right up.
So you grew up in the city. You'd already been bitten by the performer bug. So what kind of stuff did you find yourself involved in high school? Because New York is an excellent environment for this. Like you can actually have meaningful exposure and experience quite young.
Yeah, well, and the great thing too is there's so many arts programs around the city. So depending on what type of art you're interested in, there's so many different places you can go. So like I did the Abram Arts Center on the East Side for a little while there, did a couple of just classes and plays with them and lessons, and then obviously did everything at school and then summer programs wherever I could find them. And I basically just have been doing this nonstop as long as someone will let me.
And so you were driven throughout high school in this way. Did you study theater in college? Like, did you know that you wanted to perform then?
Yes, I went to my mother, the teacher, and I was like, hey, when you go to college, do you have to take like English and history, math and science? And she goes, yeah, a little bit. So I said, okay, well then I'm not going to go. And she hit the floor. And so our compromise was that I did have to go to college, but that I could do a BFA program. I could do a program where it was all acting all the time and really focus in on the career and the art form that I wanted to. So that's actually what brought me out to LA. I went to USC. They have a school of theater at the time. And so I did a 4-year acting program of just 6 days of acting all day, every day.
I have to say, when I think USC, I don't think that particular program.
Yeah. You think of the cinema, sure. The School of Theater was very small comparatively.
So are there people from that program that we've seen do other things? Is it one of those situations where like there are a bunch of you and then you kind of came up together?
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, I definitely can mention a few of those, but even back in the day, Forrest Whitaker is an alum. We have a couple other really, really big alum who are, of course, skipping my mind at the moment. But so one of the really interesting ones is Beck Bennett, who's on SNL right now. So
I met him
Kyle
the other week.
Beck was literally in my class. We did plays together all through those years. So yeah, he and Kyle were at USC, and now they're on SNL, which is pretty exciting.
Wow, Kyle too?
Yeah, Kyle Mooney.
I met them both at SNL 3 months ago now. It was the episode that Dave Chappelle was hosting. So Dave invited me and my wife, and then I just saw the cast afterwards. I also got to meet Bowen Yang, who played me, so that was fun.
It's very cool, yeah.
we had like a nice connection. We had a photo together and whatnot. But that's so fun that you and Beck were in the same program, trying to hone your craft, and then like now you see him on TV every weekend. Well, I don't know if you watch SNL every weekend, but
well, it's fun too. Is that I've seen sides of Beck that like the world has yet to see. Like I'm so excited for him and the rest of his career, because we did a lot of very deep drama work together as well. So I always knew he was very, very funny, and he had they had Good Neighbor, which was their sketch group at the time. But it's I've seen him do work that people, the SNL crowd, haven't even really seen.
Wow, listen to that. It's like the many sides of Beck Bennett. Like now we all have something to look forward to.
The many sides of Beck Bennett. He's a tremendously talented actor, comedy and drama. So he's got a big career. That's
such good fun. That genuinely does excite me, because like think about what lies ahead. So while you were growing up as a performer, somewhere along the line you got exposed to Dungeons and Dragons, and so I wanted to ask when that happened, because I have to say, Deborah, I played Dungeons and Dragons as a kid.
Yeah.
And let's just say that you would have stood out in our group.
Sure. Probably not many girls played.
Yeah. There were no girls in at least like our little group.
Well, and that's been some of the fun and some of the what I've been feel tasked to do with Dungeons and Dragons now, is I think I didn't come to it till my mid-20s. And I think some of that was that I did feel that there was a barrier to entry, that somehow it was like a secret club and you had to be invited to come and play. And even if that wasn't necessarily entirely true, that was how it felt as an outsider. So I didn't come to it till an adult. And I think now how much it's enriched my life and how much I could have really used it when I was a kid. So my goal right now is to really open it up and say, and it's been something that Wizards, who publish D&D, have been doing as well with this recent edition, is say, everyone come and play, even if you don't know the rules, even if you make mistakes. This is just about collaborative storytelling and learning how to be spontaneous. So I whenever I play, I keep inviting new players to come and play with me. That's my favorite thing to do.
Well, I definitely wanted to dig into this, because this is like the greatest thing I've ever heard or experienced.
Oh my God.
Because I'm going to relate my experience, which is probably a little bit more customary. So I'm a bit older than you. And I grew up in the 80s, and Dungeons and Dragons was one of it's like the heyday, honestly, like the 80s and Dungeons and Dragons and the dice.
What edition did you start playing?
Legitimately, I think it was like the original. Like there wasn't even an edition number. So there was basic Dungeons and Dragons, and then there was advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and they had like different rules. And then there was second edition advanced Dungeons and Dragons, would try to clean some of the stuff up. But but we were playing like the OG Keep on the Borderlands like basic set.
Do you have your books still?
I think they might have literally disintegrated from all of our handling of them, Deborah, because we had our grubby paws, like our grubby childish paws, and like endless meals being
Well, that's good. They should be
around
well used.
these volumes. So it was me, my older brother, and I'm telling you this story. This might entertain you. So my brother is now a professor of psychology at NYU. He got married like a number of years ago. But my best man speech for him was about how he was the dungeon master when we were playing Dungeons and Dragons. Like I was trying to like paint a picture of us growing up. So it was him, me, and then our neighbor. And then there might have been like some people that kind of came in and out, but really like the three of us were like the core because like we lived on the same street. And it was such like a way of when you called it collaborative storytelling. But it was almost like a way for you to have this robust fantasy life for yourself as a kid. And I was a very geeky Asian kid. My brother was equally geeky. And so then you had these incredible narratives about yourself as like this dragon slaying hero going out into the woods and taking all these risks and like, having all these achievements. So it was very, very important to my sense of happiness and belonging as a kid. And you discovering it in your 20s as a creative and then enjoying some of those same elements like makes me really happy because in my case I associate it with that idyllic time of life and the thought of people discovering it at later points is just an amazing idea to me.
Oh, cool. Well, I mean, I think as an actor, so much of it is about keeping that inner child that likes to play and have a rich imagination alive. I mean, that's my job, is collaborative storytelling. So this was it's a lovely way to practice. It's a lovely way to feel a little bit more ownership over a story as well, because as an actor, I'm rarely writing or creating the story. I'm just sort of kind of trying to live in it and absorb it. So in D&D, it is that really nice sense of like, oh, this originated from me in some regard. And
yeah, I saw that you were actually writing the storylines and everything else, which is awesome.
I've really loved game master, being a game master and writing the stories and leading a team through.
It's so much responsibility.
It can be, yes. You have to know all the rules to some extent, and sometimes sort of solve some social things that go on at a table, but I've had almost entirely positive experiences.
So was there an individual that was kind of your introducer to this?
Absolutely. So my managers at the time, one of their sort of junior associates, he had been playing his whole life, like probably started with the original, went for weekends where they would play for 30 hours straight kind of thing. And I had always said I was so interested and I wanted to play, but I just didn't know how to get started. And he offered to run a game for me and my friends. So he first introduced us. We played with him for about a year. And then for our next campaign, he sort of suggested that we start to switch the responsibility of writing the campaign. So I was the first one to go. And I think that's when it really bit me. And I said, wow, I can draw from my own interests in these worlds and these genres that I think are really interesting. Because I'm oddly not a big fantasy person. That was never a huge part of my background. I'm more sort of children's lit, that kind of sort of imaginative space rather than like dark Tolkien sort of fantasy. So I lean a little more that way, a little more towards innocence. So for me to be able to say, wow, this is just a structure that I can paint anything on it and use it. So I can do something that feels, like a storybook and not necessarily Tolkien-esque if it sort of leans more towards me. So that has been the fun of the last few years, is sort of putting my own stamp on it.
This episode of Yank Speaks is brought to you by Literati Kids. If you like reading and you think children should read, this is a product for you. So Great Children's Books opens up new worlds for discovery. With Literati Kids, your child can explore uncharted places every month with incredible stories handpicked by experts. So Literati Kids is a try before you buy subscription book club. Each month, Literati delivers 5 vibrantly illustrated children's books, bringing the immersive magic of reading right to your home. And they've got age-based book clubs that ensure appropriate reads. So for story time and letting them read on their own, I personally grew up loving Choose Your Own Adventure books. I also loved the Berenstain Bears. Freaking loved them. So you can get all this awesomeness brought to your children with a cool monthly subscription through Literati Kids. So head to literati.com/yang for 25% off your first 2 orders. It's pretty awesome. 25% off, folks. Select your child's book club and start them on a literary journey like no other. Literati.com/yang is the only place you can find 25% off your first 2 orders. And this one-of-a-kind book subscription is the most joyful way to foster a lifelong love of learning for kids. So literati.com/yang. This episode of Yank Speaks is brought to you by Athletic Greens, the most comprehensive daily nutritional beverage you are going to find. Here's the deal. You get some Athletic Greens, comes in little pouches or like a little bowl of powder, however you want to do it. Dump it into some water, mix it up, drink it, and it tastes great. When I was with my sister, she put it in a smoothie for me. It's amazing too, but you don't need it. It tastes good, and it's this all-in-one superfood powder, by far the easiest, most delicious nutritional habit you can add to your health routine today. Helps your gut. It has 75 vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced ingredients. It's got all that good stuff that you get when you eat veggies. Pretty cool, easy to use, and because of this podcast, you can get a discount on Athletic Greens and some free vitamin D. So what's that discount? You get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase if you visit our link today. So whether you're looking for better performance or better health, Athletic Greens makes it easy. So visit athleticgreens.com, join health experts, athletes, and health-conscious go-getters around the world. Make a daily commitment to health every day. That's athleticgreens.com/yang and get your free supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs today.
Now, Deborah, I ran for president. You probably knew that.
What? No.
but there was this element that I had from Dungeons and Dragons. So I went to law school. My parents, who also like yours, were very into education. So I went to law school and practiced law unhappily for 5 months, and then left to start an illfated.com. But one of the things that drove me was I had this quote from myself. I guess I don't know if you're allowed to quote yourself, but it was like that when I was a kid growing up playing Dungeons and Dragons, I didn't dream about being the scribe. like I dreamt about going into the woods and slaying the dragon. With the comparison being that my lawyer job felt like being the scribe, where I was just like, and the version of law I was practicing, which was corporate transactions, genuinely did feel like I was documenting someone else's accomplishments.
Interesting.
It really did feel like that. And so then I was like, I should try and accomplish something myself.
Yeah. Well, there is something amazing with D&D that it's about practicing being heroic, even in an imaginative place. It's
Yes, that's where I was going.
Rescuing innocent people and stopping the tyrants. That is a beautiful thing to practice as a kid and an adult.
Yeah. So as a kid, I practiced it all the time, and then I found adulthood to be driving me in a very different direction. And I think one of the sources of strength I had to try to start a business or do some of the things I've done entrepreneurially was from Dungeons and Dragons, was because you had this sense that you could paint your own picture of the future and then try to actualize it. And I feel like artists and creatives do that, entrepreneurs do that in positive cases. I mean, politicians sometimes, every once in a blue moon. but I'm so glad that you saw in Dungeons and Dragons this canvas that you could paint, and that you said, you know what, my version of it is going to be more distinct to me.
Well, there's that, and I think also it's a wonderful space to, if you do it right and safely with the right group of people, to explore identity as well, and the idea that We don't have to be
because the characters you draw up for yourself are just versions of yourself.
Well, versions of yourself that you aspire to be, or
Yes.
are afraid to be, or even if you play a villain, it might be all the things that you're scared about within yourself, and so it is this sort of space in which to try on, hopefully safely and respectfully of everyone else at your table, but to try on different aspects of who you are and see how it feels, and see how other people respond to you and what that means. And I think role-playing games, collaborative games, are such rich ground for that kind of exploration. Again, there are toxic tables and things like that, but for the most part, with your close friends, I just think it's a really cool, safe space, especially for kids who are still figuring out who they are or who they want to be, to experiment with that.
I'm trying to get my kids into it. I've been unfortunately a little bit tied up right now. And I will say that as a parent now, the competition is much stiffer, because it's not like my brother and I had screens around. You know what I mean? It was like, use your imagination, or like, like what was the
sit quietly in a corner.
Go outside and play, run around. So I just love that you're this incredible ambassador for Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games and collaborative storytelling. So you discovered it in your 20s, and I feel like around then, I guess your career took off like around that time. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, early 20s is when I booked True Blood, and then I probably got into D&D 3 or 4 years later.
So what was it like after your career started to take off on True Blood? Because I'd imagine it's a very different set of experiences where all of a sudden you were in the public eye to a much higher extent. I'm sure you got offered different kinds of roles than you had previously. You're kind of balancing your own artistic vision with what people saw saw as like the ideal role for you. All of a sudden you have agents who are actually making money, et cetera, et cetera. So it must have been like a period that was like filled with change on multiple fronts.
I mean, yes and no. I think, a lot of that happens, and then you have to decide as an individual how much of it you embrace. So I think absolutely I got better opportunity. I had fantastic representation that was not, available to me previous to that, which meant I was able to audition for more and more interesting projects. In terms of sort of public eye and view and things like that, I very quickly decided to just step away from that. This is not that strange for actors, but I think people are surprised to hear it. I generally don't like being the center of attention, unless I am acting, unless I'm in that space, and that's sort of the point of the moment.
I will confess to you, Deborah, I'm the same way.
Yeah, I think that surprises some people, but I think it's more common than we give it credit for, yeah.
Knowing even what I know about you, that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. Just a little bit. When you've been dorky your whole life, you just sort of go, don't look at me.
I will say, Deborah, just on a personal level, I just want to throw this out there. This may happen to you. It's like, so occasionally someone would come visit the household, and they'd be visiting my wife or something like that. And then they would see me, and I think there was like some kind of media-rific version of me that like they might have had in their mind's eye, but then instead it's just like me puttering around, and it's like, oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know if you get this, but because of that, I never get, are you Deborah Ann Woll? I get, you know who you look like.
Oh, I have gotten I certainly have gotten a lot of like, hey, are you Andrew Yang kind of thing.
Really?
Yeah,
that's great.
And then it would be, and then, I say yes.
Yeah, I think because I don't maybe put on much of a celebrity persona, that when people meet me, I do get the, you know who you look like, because they don't believe that an actress would be at the grocery store in her sweatpants, So I think it's sort of that space. And then also because I'm geekier, and the roles that I played are not necessarily leaning into that aspect of who I am. I don't know who people expect to meet, but it's probably not, this girl, So that, yeah, it's been interesting to see fan reaction. But luckily, most of the fans of True Blood and Daredevil have been kind of geeky like me too. So it's been a nice...
I resemble that. And I would have to say that, like, I liked you before this conversation. Like, I like you more now. Like, you're such like a delightful, grounded, down to earth person. I do want to talk a bit about Daredevil because I was a big fan of that show. And,
Sorry.
I mean, it's not your fault. I mean, heck, like, you were one of the people that made it a hit.
Thanks.
Was there anything going on there? Because like there was the entire Netflix, like Marvel, Daredevil. Like it really seemed like everyone regarded your show as like the best of them, which I would agree with. No, not a knock on the other shows that were out there, but I think you were like the first major effort.
Yeah, we were certainly the tent pole. We were the first one to kind of test and see if it would be accepted, and yeah.
And just the way Dungeons and Dragons had a really big impact on my childhood, the Daredevil comics did too.
Did it really? Oh, yeah. Wow.
So that, it sounds like, was not your experience. Like, you probably read the comics after you got the role.
Yes, yeah. I wasn't a big comic book reader as a kid. That was new to me, and so yeah, I found the sort of the storylines that I knew that they were going to be drawing inspiration from, and then the artwork that I knew that they'd be drawing inspiration from. I went back and I read some of those runs. In terms of Karen, however, I was very happy to hear that they were open to doing some new directions and finding some sort of new storylines for her, because comic books have not always been the most friendly to their female characters.
Yeah, I like what they did with
yeah, I appreciated it very much as well, and so I didn't necessarily go back reading so much for content as I did for sort of get a sense of what the mood would be, how they were going to portray the series.
The Daredevil comics were very impactful on both me and my brother. There was like the Frank Miller runs that you're talking about, and then there was the Born Again run, which also was Frank Miller, I believe, that included Karen Page, though not the Netflix version of Karen Page. It was like
we made a nod to it, but gave her a little more agency.
Yeah, and so those characters being brought to life was really really fun for me. And I'm sure you got a lot of fans like me who were talking about how the series meant a lot to them too, because they just had loved the characters for years and years.
Yeah, no, absolutely we did. And, I think anything that is has such a strong following previous to your iteration, you really hope that you do it justice and that they feel like you are adding to the story rather than wiping the slate clean, even if you do your own take, that you're sort of paying homage. But also the really wonderful thing I've discovered about comic book fans is I think because comic books redo stories all the time, they reboot and change things, and even within Daredevil there's been 3 or 4 sort of repeats of a new origin story.
He's been born again a few times.
Right? They're very surprisingly open to stories being switched up and changing some things around, and characters don't have to stay, Karen Page doesn't have to be exactly the coiffed, 50s skirt that she was, when they first started writing her. They were very open to expanding on it. So that's been a really cool part of, I think, the comic book fandom.
Do you have any fun backstage or on-set stories?
Oh boy! I mean, it was a while ago. I mean, I have one. We were, I was filming a scene with J.L. Lee outside the sort of hotel in season 3 that was the Kingpin's hotel, and I was trying to get a story or something like that. And we had shot the scene previous to it before winter break, so early December in New York, where it was still kind of warm. So we were dressed for like fall. January 12th or whatever comes around and we're continuing the scene, and it is 18 degrees or something like that, and we're in these tiny little coats. So Jay and I can't even, it gets to the point where we're so cold, like our brains stop sort of understanding words. So we're garbling, my fingers are blue, I couldn't hold my pencil to pretend to write. So we kept running inside and putting our hands over the heating vent, but I felt very bonded to Jay that day as we suffered through the cold. I do think it's fun to tell those stories because it feels like acting is a very glamorous job, and it can be, but I can count those days on one hand. Mostly it is being very cold or wet or covered in blood. Or
covered in blood. Well, now people can track down that scene and like see if they can find when you guys are freezing and whether they can detect it. You definitely took those characters to like the next level, modernized it, but also really preserved the essence of what made them so important to so many people, including me. It was a lot of fun. Like I really was very saddened when that series. Like I think everyone knows that series somehow got like cut short. Like there was more.
I mean, we didn't necessarily know that it was ending, so it wasn't like we could wrap it up maybe in a way that might have been more satisfying. Although I do like that ending. I think you can imagine the Nelson Murdoch and Paige sort of banner going forward from there. But yeah, I think with no begrudgments or anything like that, businesses do what businesses have to do. But it would have been nice to know maybe like I would have said goodbye to people differently. I would have stolen something from the set. I would have done all my things that kind of wrap stuff up, but instead it was just sort of, we're not going back, and I had to find a lot of emails.
Well, a lot of people were right there with you, Deborah. So since then, you've been staying busy. Are you working on things right now that you're excited about that your fans should look out for, should be excited around the corner?
I mean, because we've been talking about D&D, I mean, obviously this year, this industry has sort of shuttered quite a bit. I've done a couple of projects that, followed very closely the COVID protocols, but it does add a huge budgetary expense on top. So, there's less you can do with the movie, things like that. So, there's a couple of small projects that will come out in the coming months and year that I got to do this year that was really fun. But mostly we've been talking about D&D. And I had this series, Relics and Rarities, that I made a couple of years ago that I'm so proud of. And so I'm not able to do a second season of that necessarily, but I have a new idea, something else I would really like to pursue. So I've been slowly putting things together.
Pursue it, do it.
Yeah, seeing
People
if I
would
can
love
make
to
it
see
happen.
it.
It's really hard to get anything made, so it's small steps at a time, but it's calling up a lot of my a lot of friends that I've made in this community. And
hey, producers, if you're watching this,
fund me.
Is it going to be called Relics and Rarities, or is it be
called
something else?
That was the original show, and that that has to say sort of canon to that series and that company. So this will just be a totally new show, but with some of the same people, and I really hope I can get it up and running and give it a shot.
Me too. This seems like it would do so much good in the world.
I love having guests on. So if you are interested at all, maybe I'll reach out, see if you want to come on.
The least I can do, of course. I mean, you're on my podcast right now. Like, and I obviously I can't be saying how awesome it would be for your show to go and not agree to be a guest. So clearly I'll be there.
If scheduling works out, we definitely should do that.
Well, would love that. Thank you for everything you do, Deborah. And again, I was a fan of yours before this conversation, but I'm a bigger fan of you as just a person and artist and creative force. Really appreciate it, and hopefully we will see the show of yours soon, and you and all sorts of other things, because you improve anything you're a part of.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so generous of you. This has just been such a pleasure, and so out of the blue. I would never have expected to be on your podcast. So when you mentioned it, I thought, oh, what a great, again, another thing that D&D does, sort of bringing different, industries and conversations together. So.
That was what drew me to you.
That's fine. Well, I saw you did that was the D&D for Dems, and I was like, this is so cool.
It was a very important part of my life. Like
huge.
It genuinely, I think, did drive me to do some of the things I've done.
Yeah.
So I just knew I'd enjoy getting some time.
Well, lovely to meet you. Officially.
Thank you for listening in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, please do subscribe to Yang Speaks and click on notifications so we can let you know every time we have a new episode.